Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Deck Tech. Today, I'm doing a deck tech on a commander that isn't technically legal, but if you talk to your play group, we'll probably convince them to make it legal. This is Claire de Lune, Joy Sculptor. What she does, she is a white-blue legendary creature, human performer, and she has whenever Claire de Lune enters the battlefield, for the rest of the game, your tokens you own become cards that are still tokens. They continue to exist after they leave the battlefield, which is quite notable because that's entirely what this deck is based around. It is token mania. And she also has the very important ability of pay one generic, one white, one blue, and tap, and you may put a token from your graveyard or your hand onto the battlefield. So, what is this deck's goal? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to have some more unique commander wins here. First of all, the always rare and impressive to accomplish Battle of Wits, which means I will, at the beginning of my upkeep, I will have over 200 cards in my library, but with my tokens turning into actual cards is actually much easier than I thought it would be. It also has backup win condition of a Halo Fountain, or it just stompies its way to victory. It has a ton of token generators, can get a critical mass very quickly, and also if the conditions align per se, I can actually win through the rare Hedron alignment victory condition, a favorite of David's over there.
Man, I've wanted to see Hedron alignment work in Commander work for so long, and this deck does it. So thumbs up for me.
So what does it do? This deck, first of all, makes a lot of tokens. Like, a lot is an understatement. There's a cascading effect for some of these tokens, as I will note later. Then I play Claire, she makes them permanent, and that means I take the token, put it in a sleeve, and now it's a real card and gets shuffled into my deck. I also have a lot of like shuffle in the library type effects for the graveyard to stuff as many cards in my deck as possible. I will have a quick disclaimer. This deck requires a lot of tokens and a lot of extra sleeves of the same color, because you can't just throw in blank sleeves because everyone will know what it is. You have to make it a surprise to yourself as well. So one of the important things about this deck to get the Battle of Wits victory is cards that shuffle your graveyard into your library. And you can hit the major ones here: Elixir of Immortality, Feldon's Cane, Cosmic Butcher of Truth, Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre, Echo of Aeons, Time Reversal, the little known card Clear the Mind, and Campfire. All these cards, in one way or another, when they touch the graveyard, either you cast them and they shuffle the graveyard and library, or, for example, the Shuffle Titans, they hit the graveyard and they shuffle it all into your library as well. Echo of Aeons and Time Reversal are specifically like these wheel and deal effects where they shuffle it in, then you draw 7 cards, so it's also a way to just kind of draw through your deck. Because unfortunately, part of this deck, there's a ton of dead draws once you get going, because you have these tokens that don't have mana cost, meaning they're not able to be cast. So to work around that, there are some support cards that I put in here. Namely is As Foretold, which allows me to cast my tokens for a mana cost of 0 rather than their actual mana cost, which doesn't exist. Omniscience, I can cast things without paying their mana cost. Show and Tell, it may be just one token, but as I will note later, there's some pretty big tokens I can do with that, and Quicksilver Amulet, as well as Claire herself. The tokens I can generate with this deck, and the cards I do it with: Dark Depths, paired with Vesuva, that'll create a 2020 flying indestructible Merit Lage that will now become permanent, which means I can have a ton of them if I just keep recurring it, and I can just have a graveyard full of them, which is there's also important ones: Academy Manufacturer. Whenever I generate treasure tokens, I also generate food tokens and clue tokens, and it just like helps accelerate my token strategy, just getting more and more tokens, which some tokens can be used for mana, and then they'll go in the graveyard, make a graveyard bigger, shuffle it in, making a bigger library. And then probably one of the MVPs of this deck is the card Reef Worm. Reef Worm, when it dies, it puts a blue 3/3 fish token onto the battlefield with, when this creature dies, put a 6/6 blue whale token onto the battlefield with, when this creature dies, put a 9/9 Kraken on the battlefield. So with tokens being permanent, this gets out of hand very, very quickly. I create tokens that are permanents, they die, create more tokens, and then they die and they create more tokens. And because each of these are permanent, they just keep sticking around, keep going, and getting tokens just gets bigger and bigger with Reform. Also, I have some classics as like a little control piece of Dovescape, which turns everybody's spells, or not creature spells, into birds with flying. I also have Luminarch Ascension, generates a bunch of angels. Abdel Adrian, Goran's Ward, which what it does is, because my tokens are now actual permanents, I can exile them and get them back through Abdel Adrian and create tokens with that as well. So it's just, again, keeping the token pile going, assembling that critical mass. Then we also have White Sun Zenith, Elspeth Sun's Champion, Adeline Resplendent Cathar, and Hallowed Spirit Keeper, which tracks the number of creature cards I have in my graveyard. And then when she dies, she generates a ton of tokens, which I should have a ton of tokens in this deck. Some other things I do to support this deck is Annoying Procession, doubles up all my tokens. Beanie Brax Zoologist allows me to draw cards through my token generation. Junk Winder has affinity for tokens, and whenever tokens get onto the battlefield, it taps a non-land permanent an opponent controls, and it doesn't untap until the controller's next untap step. So a little bit of control right there. And there's also Curiosity's Crafter, which allows me to draw even more cards. So look at the overall mana base. This mana base is actually, I would say, pretty resilient. It's got a very wide selection of all your basic different types of dual lands, as well as a very big amount of mana rocks, including mana rocks that also generate tokens, naming Replicating Ring and Skyclave Relic. That just helped. More mana means more tokens, and everything goes very quickly and very well. Some weaknesses of this deck: you will have dead draws early game. It is very, very challenging to kind of get through all of the tokens that you'll be putting into your own deck, and you probably will hit them sometimes. Fortunately, this deck has a lot of card draw to combat that, but as your deck gets bigger, it gets more and more challenging. This deck also, as I mentioned earlier, is very expensive to run with in terms of the supplies you need, because you need all the tokens with you, or if you have infinite tokens or sleeves, it just requires a lot of stuff. And it is a non-traditional deck, so some of the rulings around all this will be kind of a test for your more rule savvy opponents of like what you can do, what you can't do. It's a very challenging build. It's like it starts out simple, but then it's more and more complicated as you just stretch the possibilities with an uncommander. What do you guys think?
I'm gonna add one more weakness to this deck as well, is that it's very commander dependent. So if Claire de Lune, if you keep casting it and it gets countered frequently, as in if you're not first on the play, this deck has a much harder time actually winning with its various instant win conditions like Battle of Wits and Hedron. Because generally speaking, like, you need to cast it once to get it on the table and have that effect for the tokens to be tokens, and they can leave the battlefield at will. But if it gets countered on the way down for the first time, you have to work a lot harder to get it onto the field.
Yes, and I will agree with that. It is one of the most commander heavy decks I've ever built. This deck will not run without its commander. It's not meant to function without its commander. Do you have anything, Eli?
I think David hit on it the most. You know, with it being so reliant on your commander, there's also a really bad case where I think you would have to scoop if it happened, is if your commander gets stolen, or even like there's no way for you to flicker it back to you, or even think. I haven't looked at the full deck list in a hot second, but you don't seem to have any ways to flicker or bounce Claire de Lune to have this repeatable effect, because that them becoming permanents is a one-time ability as she TBs. So
part of this deck is that it mana accelerates kind of so well that I don't anticipate Claire staying there very often. I will have to recast her at times. So this deck's prepared for it, but it is certainly a weakness of it that incurring mana screw like everyone does in the game of Commander, it is very susceptible to just becoming a slog to get through just to play the game normally.
I will also point out as well, you're also going to need to transport your tokens as well. So, you know, in addition to sleeving your tokens and getting them in the first place, you also need to get probably a separate deck box for it, or a deck vault for your tokens. Just another item to add to the list if you're playing this deck.
Yes, and you will also have to remove all your tokens from your deck. So you'll spend a lot of time going through this deck and pulling out all the tokens, separating it out, making your deck normal again. This needs its own box of just cards to work with.
also, good luck shuffling this deck once you have like 50 more tokens added into it.
Yes, we encourage team shuffling with this deck, and no pile shuffling, because each of those piles will be a deck. Well, I think that's it for today. Thank you very much. Follow us on Twitter, like, share, subscribe, comment down below if you think this is a good deck, bad deck, or just if you have an opinion you want to let us know. Comment down below. Thank you.